Have you noticed subtle changes in a nearby elderly, as if he was slowly turning off? Maybe that distant look, the silence where there was before conversation, or that squeeze in my heart when he says something like, "I don't know if I'll be here at Christmas." Sometimes it is not serious diseases or sudden crises that announce the end. They are small gestures. These are the details that no one wants to see. Often the signs that an elderly man is slowly departing are ignored by those who love the most. This is because blind love, because the fear of losing paralyzes, because we prefer to believe that everything is fine. But the truth is that the body speaks, the soul warns, and the farewell, as silent as it may seem, gives its signs in advance. In this video, you will discover 7 exciting and often invisible signs that show that an elderly person may be saying goodbye to little by little. And attention, recognizing these signs is not just a gesture of affection, it is an act of respect, honor, and often the last opportunity to offer true love. You, who have a father, a mother, a grandfather or grandmother, may have already noticed a behavioral change. Suddenly, that person who loved to talk becomes isolated. Someone who always got their own bed now lives lying down longer, unwilling to get up. The food changes. The expression changes. The brightness in the look begins to disappear. We're not just talking about old age. We are talking about silent decline, a kind of match that does not happen overnight, but is built in time, like a slow sunset. And it is in this silence that the greatest cries of help live. You will see in this video signs that involve behavior, language, habits, and emotions. Signs that you probably never associated with a farewell. And most importantly, you will learn to identify when there is still time to change the story. When you can still hold your hand, say you love, to be real. Today's theme is delicate, but necessary. And if you got here, it's because you feel deep down that you need to hear it, or maybe because someone close to you has already shown any of these signs and you didn't know what to do. This video is an invitation to open your eyes. It's a warning, but above all, it's a gesture of love. Because recognizing that an elderly man is slowly departing is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of empathy, maturity, and courage. So if you are a son, daughter, grandson, caregiver, or simply someone who loves an elderly, this video is for you. It is time to observe more carefully, to interpret the gestures that come from the heart, and understand that the signs exist, even when no one wants to talk about them. Prepare yourself, because the next few minutes can change your way of seeing who you love, and maybe they help you make peace with feelings you didn't even know were inside. Now that you have understood the importance of this theme, let's start with the first signs. What they reveal goes far beyond what the eyes can see. Now that you have understood the importance of this theme, let's start with the first signs. What they reveal goes far beyond what the eyes can see. But before we follow, I want to ask you something that may seem simple but has a huge power. Leave a comment below. Tell me if this subject has touched your heart, if you have gone through it with someone dear, or if you are living this moment now. Sometimes just sharing, we already start relieving the weight it carries in the chest. And you can be sure, what you say here can help many people who are going through the same pain, but you still don't have the courage to talk. This space is for you. It is for those who understand that aging is not only to see the body weaken, but also to see feelings transform, ties to tighten, or get lost. Your experience, your testimony, may be exactly what someone needed to hear today. And if this content is making sense to you, don't forget to leave your like now. This helps YouTube to understand that this theme is important, that it deserves to be spread, that it needs to reach more people. Perhaps with a simple click, you are helping someone recognize a signal that has so far been unnoticed. Subscribe to the channel too. Here, you will find more content like this, sensitive, deep, and focused on those who really care about the physical, emotional, and spiritual health of our elderly. Your presence here is essential. Together we can create a stream of empathy, information, and care. Now yes, take a deep breath, because the following signs can open your eyes in a way that you may never have imagined. And perhaps by seeing them, you can still do something while there is time. Let's go ahead. Aging doesn't just happen in the body. It also reaches the soul, mind, the way one sees the world and how the world comes to see it. There is a type of envy-ursification that is invisible to those who look too fast. It is the one who slowly settles without fuss, like a light that slows down until almost turned off. It is emotional, social, and behavioral dismissal, a silent, almost imperceptible transition that many only realize when there is no more time to reverse. The most cruel is that this process often occurs indoors before the family's own eyes. But as it does not scream, as it does not bleed, as it does not scandalize, it goes unnoticed. That grandfather who always laughed loudly at Sunday meetings, now she prefers to be quiet in a corner. That mother who loved to pack the garden and talk about life, now spends hours sitting, looking at nothing. And we try to justify by saying that it is normal, that it is just tiredness, that is the age of age. But behind this silence, there is something much bigger happening. The truth is tough. Many elderly are slowly departing, and no one is realizing. They do not shout for help. They go out slowly. Each time they fail to comment on the day, each time they reject an invitation to go out, each time they say, "Let go," they are actually saying, "I'm already going." But since these words are not said directly, we do not listen. Or worse, we listen and prefers to ignore. The body ages, yes. But what hurts the most is when the spirit begins to give up. When that glow in the eyes goes out. When the routine ceases to make sense. When even breakfast loses its taste. The elderly begins to move away from the world even before the world says goodbye to him. And it happens in silence, in small gestures, in details that only those who really pay attention can notice. Many say that the elderly are stubborn, grumpy, difficult to deal. But is it really stubbornness? Or is it just a form of protection against forgetfulness, against abandonment, against the pain of feeling useless in a society that only values youth? When an elderly man begins to shut up, when he stops participating in conversations, when he stops asking for help, it may not be proud. Maybe it's resignation. Perhaps he is only accepting that he is no longer seen as someone who matters, and that's why we need to talk about it. We need to learn to read these signs before it's late, because the emotional pain of an elderly man who is slowly departing is deep, and it does not appear in blood tests, nor heals with analgesic. This pain lives in the soul, and the only medicine is presence, listening, affection. The only prevention is active love. He who asks, who watches, who hugs, who insists. Have you ever stopped to think that maybe that refusal to leave home isn't just laziness? Maybe that silence is not tranquility but loneliness? That this dish left in half is not a lack of appetite, but lack of willingness to continue? It takes sensitivity to understand what is being said between the lines, and courage to act, even when there seems to be nothing wrong. The signs are there. They have always been. But the rush of everyday life, the lack of time, the routine it consumes, all this makes us not see the essentials. And the essentials in this case is to realize that the elderly is saying goodbye much before the time, that he is gathering into himself because he no longer feels the warmth of the human connection, because the modern world is too noisy to hear the whispers of old age. Maybe you think it's okay because he's still eating, it's still walking, it's still living. But living really is much more than breathing. It is feeling belonging, it is feeling that its existence still makes a difference. And when the elderly loses that sense of belonging, he begins to leave, gradually, in silence, like who doesn't want to bother. And that's where the danger lives, because when he stops disturbing, he has often given up on fighting. He no longer complains, no longer questions, no longer asks, accepts everything, agrees with everything, shut up in the face of everything, and we call it maturity, wisdom, even peace. But it is not always. Sometimes it is just the end approaching, disguised as conformism. You need to be aware, because recognizing these signs is not just a way of taking care of each other. It is also a way to prepare emotionally for what is to come. It is the chance that, still in life, to demonstrate love, affection, gratitude. It is the time to be present, truly present, before time covers our absence. I know this theme stirs deep emotions, because no one wants to face the idea that it may be losing someone gradually. It is much easier to pretend that everything is normal. But this video is not for those who want to live in illusion, it's for those who really love, and who loves, cares, who loves, observes, who loves, acts. If you are here so far, it is because something inside you have realized that there is something different in that elderly you love. You may not yet know how to explain. Maybe it's just a feeling then. But listen to that sign. Pay attention to the details. Because every minute counts. Every gesture, every look, every silence. Everything is a warning. Now, if at some point in this video you have thought of someone, be a father, a mother, a grandfather, a grandmother, so I want to make a request. Leave here in the comments what has touched you the most so far. Write the phrase, "I want to learn to hear the signs," or shares your story. It can be a memory, an outburst, a doubt. The important thing is not to keep it just for you. Sometimes your pain is similar to that of thousands of people. And when we share, we create an empathy network that can save lives. Let us now dive into something that you may have never notified carefully: the silent signs that an elderly man is slowly departing. These signs do not appear at once. They come slowly, as if they didn't want to bother, as if they didn't want to disturb anyone's routine. But they are there, and once you learn to see them, you will never look at that elderly in the same way. The truth is that the body may even follow, but when the soul begins to say goodbye, behavior changes. And it is these changes, these little breaks in the routine, these subtle gestures, which reveal what is happening inside. One of the first signs is sudden isolation. That old man who always liked to talk, who made a point of being present at Sunday lunches, visits to his grandchildren, in meetings with the neighbors, suddenly begins to collect. You don't want to leave the room anymore. Prefer to be alone. Refuses invitations. It gets more silent. And this is not just tiredness. This is the beginning of an emotional removal. It is as if he were gradually disconnecting from the world, from coexistence, relationships. This kind of isolation hurts because it seems subtle, but it represents a profound change in the desire to live. Then another striking sign begins to emerge: the loss of brightness in the look. It may seem too poetic, but those who live closely know what I'm talking about. The look changes. It is distant, without focus, without purpose. That glow in the eyes that before appeared when talking about a good memory, a dear grandson, a dream or plan for the weekend, just disappear. The look is still, as if the person was physically present, but mentally elsewhere. And this, for those who perceive, is one of the most painful signs. Because the look is a window of the soul, and when it erases, it is because something very internal is changing. Another point that many do not associate with the dismissal process is neglect of personal hygiene itself. The elderly, who was always proud to dress well, who liked to be presentable, begins to abandon these care. Stop bathing frequently, stop combing your hair, no longer cares about clean or matching clothes. In some cases, even refusal helps to take care. This is not just laziness or physical difficulty. In many cases, it is a reflection of emotional exhaustion. When the person begins to feel that there is no reason to take care of himself, it is because, in some inner layer, he is already preparing to leave. Over time, the elderly memory also undergoes changes. But what draws attention here is not just forgetfulness. It is the so-called emotional selective memory. The elderly begins to speak almost exclusively from the past, tells the same stories, recalls the same episodes, revives the same old emotions, and the gift is losing importance. The future, then, is not even spoken. He no longer plans, no expectations, no question about tomorrow. Everything revolves around what has happened. It is as if he is mentally revisiting the most striking moments of life as a way of closing internal cycles, saying goodbye to the world gradually. Another sign that is usually noticed by those who live daily, but is not always interpreted in the right way, is the disinterest in food and by its own routine. That elderly who had their times well defined for meals, for walks, to watch television, or even to take care of the plants, begins to get lost in time, forget to eat, or simply no longer hungry. It begins to refuse dishes that I once loved, and along with that, it loses the notion of schedules. Sleep at random moments, it forgets simple commitments and seems oblivious to the rhythm of the house. When the appetite for life begins to disappear, the body responds the same way. Rejects food, rejects the rhythm, rejects the day. One of the most symbolic signs, and often harder to accept, is disconnect with objects and people. The elderly begins to detach from the things they once valued. It gives clothes, crumbles from memories, sets aside objects that have always accompanied him. And the most delicate, it doesn't remember closely clear people. sometimes confuses names. Other times it simply does not show the same affection, seems to forget about kulos that were once deep. This may be confused with dementia or mental confusion, but it is not always. In some cases, it is simply the mind saying, I am ending this cycle. And this happens in silence, slowly, almost like a sigh. Finally, perhaps the most direct and most ignored signal are the indirect farewell phrases. Phrases like, I won't last long, enjoy while I'm here, soon I won't be bothering you anymore, my time is coming. These phrases are often spoken with a joke, lightness, but they carry a huge weight. They are like small warnings that inside, that person feels that he is approaching the end. And when it begins to verbalize it, even if it is in a joke or outburst, it is because the feeling is already consolidated inside it. The problem is that in the rush of routine, these phrases are often ignored. They are seen as drama, exaggeration, or just a result of a bad day, but they are not. They are silent shouts that need to be heard. If you have heard any of these phrases, if you have already noticed any of these behaviors in someone close, maybe it's already happening. Perhaps the slow shutdown is underway, and perhaps there is still time to act, to be present, to rescue what can still be rescued. But for that, you need to be aware. It is necessary to break the silence. You need to hear what is not being said with words. If you have gotten here, it already shows that you care, that you want to understand more, connect more, be closer. And that's why I want to ask you something now. Leave a comment below. Write, for example, I saw this sign in my father, or I want to learn to take better care. This is not just any comment. This is a way to make a commitment to care, to affection, to the true presence. It can also be a space for outburst. If you want, you share a story, a memory, or simply a phrase that echoes inside you after hearing it all. Many children, grandchildren, nephews, or caregivers are scared to realize these signs. Some revolt, others refuse to accept, and some just ignore, as if it was easier to pretend that everything is fine. But the truth is that these signs do not arise from nothing. They are not just an age of age, nor mere consequences of natural aging. They have deeper roots, come from inside. They are silent manifestations of a tired soul, a soul that sometimes already feels that your time is running out. And this exhaustion is not necessarily physical. Many times he is emotional. It is the result of years of absence, emotional negligence, unfulfilled promises, ties that loosened over time, a life that became increasingly invisible before the eyes of those who should take care. When an elderly man begins to move emotionally away, he is most often trying to protect himself. Protect yourself from the abandonment you feel even when everyone is still around, of the silence of conversations that no longer happen, the lack of touch, look, listening. It is as if gradually he understood that the world rotates faster and faster and that he is unintentionally being behind. Modern life is cruel to whom it ages. Technology, social networks, the speed with which everything happens. All of this contributes to the elderly to feel disposable, out of context, forgotten. And when this feeling sets in, the body begins to respond. The signs are actually disguised attention requests. Each behavior change is a silent message asking, look at me, listening to me, feels my presence, I'm still here. But since these messages are not spoken with all letters, they are easily ignored. And the saddest thing is that often this happens within the most loving, most united families, because the problem is not in the lack of love, but in the lack of perception, and also in the absence of time, in the run of routine, commitments, in slips, goals. There is always an excuse for postponing the visit, not to answer the call, to avoid that conversation that requires patience. It must be acknowledged that there is a silent emotional pain in the elderly who does not express itself with tears, but with silence, with empty looks, with absence of reactions, with the not said. Often the family thinks the elderly are just silent, more at his, but behind this stillness, there may be a universe of suffocated feelings, fear of death, repentance, blame, insecurity, anguish for feeling that it is becoming a weight. These feelings are not spoken, but manifest themselves in gestures, in attitudes, in behaviors that are moving slowly. And this is where the most common error of families comes in. Minimize what is happening. To say that it is normal, which is just a phase, which is bullshit. Treat signs such as freshness, such as tantrum, as a drama, or simple les, not realizing it, ignore. To think that the elderly are like this because they want, or will improve over time. But time in this case does not heal. It only accelerates the process. The more the signs are ignored, the more the person walks away. And this clearance is not just physical. It is a deep emotional spiritual shutdown. The old man erases like a candle at the end of the night. No noise, no spectacle, only with a flame that weakens slowly. The biggest mistake, and perhaps the most painful, is not to lose a loved one. It is to realize too late that he was already saying goodbye, that the signs were there, screaming in silence, but no one had time, sensitivity, or courage to hear. And the regret that comes after that is one of the heaviest to carry, because there is no way to go back in time. You can't recover the lost moments, the denying hugs, the words that were never said. And all that remains is emptiness, a silence that screams inside us because it has not been heard in time. That's why it's so important. Now, at this moment, open your eyes. Be present, be available, not with the body, but with the heart. Care for the elderly goes far beyond bathing, preparing the food, or taking to the doctor. To take care, truly, is listening. It is sitting next door and listening, even if the speech is repetitive. It is looking in the eye and smiling, even if it does not return. It is playing fondly, even if it seems indifferent. The touch, the look, listening, are ways of saying, I see you, I recognize you, you are still important. Many families avoid deep conversations with their elderly because they are afraid of what they can hear. Fear of facing the fragility of life, fear of dealing with the truth of time. But this conversation, however difficult, is necessary. Because by ignoring it, we do not protect anyone. On the contrary, we accelerate this disconnect process. When an old man feels he can speak, that he can vent, that can be heard without judgment, he is strengthened. He feels alive. He recovers, even for a moment, the desire to continue. And it is not about avoiding death. Death is part. We all know that. But it is about ensuring that, until the last day, the elderly feels valued, sensed, loved, because no one just wants to live anymore. Everyone wants to live with meaning, and that only happens when life has ties, when the presence is felt, when affection is real. So if you noticed any of those signs on your grandfather, your mother, that dear uncle, or that neighbor who was always part of your childhood, don't ignore. Don't treat it as freshness. Don't wait for a worsening to act. The time to act is now, while there is still time to hear, to hug, to ask, how are you really? Sometimes this question is enough to rekindle something inside, to interrupt the shutdown, to show that it is still worth being a little more. And if something inside you moved all this, I invite you to comment below. You can write something simple like, I realize these signs, or I want to learn to take care of more attention. Or if you prefer, share an experience, a memory, a doubt. Everything you put here will echo in other people who are also going through this. Together we can create a space for support, empathy, and reflection. If you have come here, it has already given the first most important step to realize that something is changing, that elderly, who has always been so present, so full of life, now begins to move away in silence, that the signs are not coincidence, no whim of age. They are true requests for attention, care, love. And now that you already recognize this, what to do, how to act in the face of this reality, how to take care, how to honor, how to value, before time takes away from what can no longer be recovered. The answer is in the presence, and not just in the physical presence, but in the emotional, affective, attentive presence. The elderly do not just want quick visits or generic words. He wants to feel that it still matters, which is still heard, seen, remembered. He wants to know that even with all the changes in body and mind, there is still room for him within the family life. And this space is not conquered with promises or gifts. Conquer with time, listening, with genuine affection. So set aside time, but true time. No hurry, without the cell phone in hand, without looking at the clock every 5 minutes. Sit next door, look in the eye. Let the silence happen if necessary. Sometimes only shared silence says 1,000 words. The full presence is a balm for the soul of those who feel that it is being left behind. And in old age, this feeling is much more common than you think. Many elderly people live with a kind of loneliness that is not resolved with a physical company, but with emotional connection. Remember happy moments with him. Bring old stories, photos, songs, aromas. Make him revive moments when he was fully happy. This rescues self-esteem, reinforces the value of his trajectory, makes him realize that he was not forgotten. The elderly carry a whole world within themselves, experiences, memories, emotions, and reliving these stories is often the most powerful way to rekindle the desire to continue. When you ask about the past with true interest, you are saying, "I value who you were, and I value who you are still." Say with all the letters how important it is. Be sure to honor after you leave. Do not expect the absence to recognize the value. Words have immense power, especially when they come to real, and the elderly feel when the compliment is sincere. Say you love him, he misses, that he is inspired by him, who has learned from him. Say your presence makes a difference. These simple phrases can change the day, can change the energy of someone who is on the verge of giving up. Never underestimate the power of an affectionate word said at the right time. Be real present. Participate. Invite to be part of the routine. Include the elderly in simple decisions, in the conversations of the house, in leisure times. Often, the removal begins when the person feels that he is no longer useful, that he is only there, without function, without purpose. And that erodes inside. Give small tasks, ask the opinion, show that there is still room for him in the dynamics of the family. This returns dignity. This reinforces belonging. And here is a delicate but necessary point. I don't infantile. The elderly is not a child. Even with limitations, he carries a story, knowledge, a maturity that deserves respect. Treating as fragile, as someone who does not understand, only accelerates the process of disconnect. Treat with love, but with honor. Treat like someone who watched ways, overcome pains, built bridges, and now it only needs a little more attention to continue following with dignity. Another form of care is to respect the silences. Not every elderly wants to talk all the time. Sometimes he only needs company, an unhurried tour, a tea taken in silence, a movie watched side by side. The silent presence is also love. What hurts is not the silence between two connected people. It is the absence between people who should be together. Taking care of an elderly is also taking care of yourself, because at some point, we will all grow old. And all that we give today, in mind, listening, in respect, come back to us up front. When you take care of your father, your mother, your grandfather, your grandmother, you are teaching your children how you want to be treated. You are building a cycle of affection, a legacy of care. And if you do not live with this elderly daily, if he lives far away or is in a nursing home, use the resources he has. Call, send audio, send a photo, write a letter. What matters is not the form, it is the intention. What matters is that he knows that even at a distance he is still remembered, there is still place in his heart. A simple, "I'm longing," can illuminate a whole day of loneliness. Death is part of the life cycle. We all know. But what not everyone knows is that there are many ways to die ahead of time. When the elderly begins to feel invisible, he already starts to die inside. When you feel it is no longer important, it has no more space, which has no voice. It starts from little by little. And you can avoid that. You can reverse it. You can rescue this flame, this glow, this desire to continue. And all this starts with a simple gesture, presence. So, before going to the next part, I want you to think of someone, a name, a face, a memory, an elderly man who makes or was part of his life. Maybe it's close, maybe it's far away, maybe you are taking care of him now, maybe I haven't seen him for years. But think about it, and if you can, comment below, "I want to be more present," or "I will rescue this bond." Share a sentence you would like to say, but you haven't had the courage yet. It can be something like, "I miss you," or "I wanted to have spoken more often that I love you." These sentences, when spokenly said, turn lives, and when written here, they can inspire other people. Be sure, your comment may be exactly what someone needed to read to take action, and this is the purpose of this space. Create a network of support, of awareness, of real affection. If you have come this far, it says a lot about you. It shows that you care, that you have sensitivity, and that you are willing to see what many prefer to ignore. And so, I want to make you a sincere invitation. Subscribe to the channel now. Here, we talk about what really matters, about life, about love, about presence, and I guarantee there is much more content coming that can transform your relationship with those you love. Enjoy too and leave your like, because it helps this idea to reach more people than, like you, may be looking for exactly this conversation. Your click may be why someone opens their eyes on time. And now, tell me in the comments, what was the sign that touched you most in this video? Write down here. I want to be more present in the life of I love. This phrase is a commitment, a gesture of love, a real step towards care. And it doesn't come out yet, huh? Click on the next video that is appearing on the screen. He is the continuation of this conversation and can give you even more clarity on how to act, how to take care, how to turn the life of those who are still here by your side. Go there. I wait for you there too.